Thank you so much for joining us on Africa This Morning. We are now on Table Talk. Today's Friday conversation is touching on two worlds: being sensible and doing the right thing and running after your vision, but at the same time having fun while doing that. Joining us to share her story and her inspiration behind establishing her empire is Fela Dorutoye. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I've done my best not to fumble over your name.
You did very well.
Thank
I'm really
you so
proud
much.
of you guys in
Thank
Nairobi.
you so much. When you're looking at your identity, what would you define yourself as? A mogul, a lawyer, a makeup artist, one who is passionate about fashion? What would you define yourself as?
Homemaker, entrepreneur, mentor. Homemaker, mentor, entrepreneur.
Why homemaker first? Is that your core identity?
Yes, it is. It is. It's one of the things I define myself by. How well my children are being raised, how attentive as a wife that I am, how part of my husband's everyday living I am. Those are things that define me as a person from a family level. So yes, homemaker first.
I ask all women leaders who come on the show, is it possible for women to have it all? This is me asking you before we get into understanding what your all means. Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, yes. And all being, for me, being a mother, being a wife, being fully fulfilling my purpose, whatever that would be. Having those, having a functional relationship with my friends, and having a full life intellectually, socially, spiritually. These are all part of who I am. And I can have it all. I think so. I believe so strongly.
Let's get into what your all means. You have quite a repertoire behind you. You've done a lot. You're a woman of many fasts. You're taking on the western front of the African continent, and now you've launched yourself here and you're ready to move the East African women to understand that they need to take responsibility for who they are, to be more. Tara, you are a Nigerian makeup artist and lawyer. According to what I have researched on you, there's a lot that has been put out on you. A pioneer in the bridal makeup profession. You dared to go ahead to start the first bridal directory in 1999. You set up an international standard makeup studio and established the first makeup school in Nigeria. How did this all begin?
Okay, that's an old...
but it is
yes,
still your story.
It's still my story. Now we have 22 makeup studios across the country, 19 makeup schools across the country, over 5,000 beauty representatives who sell our product. How did that all start? Where did the inspiration come from? I had a skill, I had a talent. I had the opportunity to be able to express it. Identified it as a business, and I ran with it. I was young, I was fearless. I didn't think about failure. It didn't even cross my mind that was a possibility. So I just went ahead. And so I always say to young people, it's good to start early, where you don't have the responsibilities and the time to begin to process the whys or why not. So just jump, and I jumped. And I'm happy that I did. Even
as you jumped out, did you find it difficult to balance the world of the sensible as a lawyer and the world of passion and flow as you want in the artistry?
I like the word accountability, and I think that's one of the things that getting an education does for you. I think that some people are going to be upset with me today now and say, are you saying that being a makeup artist is not a full education? But I think that until we are able to until we're able to study makeup artistry
and structure it
in a structured way, in school, in university, where there's a robust curriculum that covers business development, that covers maybe product development, that covers product design, that covers customer service and things like that. Yet again, it cannot be fully a full education. So for me, the formal education was great for me. Even if it wasn't law I studied, if it was medicine I studied, if it was English I studied or history, whatever it was, I think that going into the university, it's important. That education is not just its ability to be able to meet deadlines. You have an assignment, you have to bring it out, you have presentations.
To discipline your art.
To discipline yourself as a person, and that discipline you can also carry. And so you work today, we have over nearly 200 employees in the company, and you see that those makeup artists who have gone into university are different for those who haven't. And so for me, I think that everyone, even if it's a passion that you have to do music, to play football, get yourself an education. Some of these careers are not for a lifetime. Some of them are too short, whether it's modeling, but get yourself that education because you need that structure.
When you started off at your school, what were you intending to bring forward, especially in the African continent, knowing very well that we have no respect for the art in terms of structuring it to a point where if you get a degree, you can be looked at the same level as one who's gotten a degree like you in law?
Unfortunately, you know, as a young person, you don't think about it. I didn't think that far, so I didn't have any big dreams. But when I started to build the business, I got to a place where I wanted to build a business that was long term. I wanted to build a business that was sustainable. And then I started to grow, and as I grew the business, I wanted to have a voice. I wanted a business that could change leadership mindsets. I wanted a business that could change the African narrative. I wanted a business that could promote our culture, our language. I wanted a business that could promote our ethnicity and our ethics. And that began to evolve as I went along on my journey. So I didn't know when I started off in my 20s that I would get to a place where for me, it would be about impacting lives, and it would be about telling the African story. It should not be about culture and moving the arts. I think that we decide to make our businesses fashionable. It's we that decide to make our businesses sexy. I think that it's my responsibility to make sure that anything that I decide to do, when I've made that decision, make it attractive enough for other people to join.
How do you balance the scale even as you're reaching forth to make your business great while still looking at how to include the African story in it, and especially when you're looking at makeup? Africa is not really considered as a primary market target for most international market brands when it comes to makeup. What are you doing to change that conversation?
That has changed already because now we have L'Oreal, we have
MAC,
and we
Black
have
Opal.
Black Opal. We have many of these international brands. That has changed. But you see, sometimes we begin to think about, when we think about the legacy of Africa, we do not think about some of the things that we think that the Western world was the one who determined. So for example, feminism, for example, feminists. We always think that the feminists are only Gloria Steinem, and then we only think about today Chimamanda Adichie. But truly, before they existed, there was Fumi Ransom Kuti, who was the mother of Fela Kuti, who was a female activist. And she was responsible for dethroning an entire king in Alaka, in the Egba land, because the king decided that women should pay taxes, and they were on due taxes that he wanted to take from the women, the market women. She galvanized the women and went to the king's palace. And traditionally, if you arrive in the king's palace and the king sees naked women, he becomes dethroned and goes on self-exile. And that's what she did, and that's activism. And there are so many of those African women. So that story is a story that still needs to be told. How can you tell the story? It's about marketing. It's about how your products are being marketed. So every name of our product is named after either an African beauty icon or an African beauty initiative. Everything around African women. So when you have a lipstick that you may have called mahogany, or you have a lip pencil that you may have called chestnut, on the other hand, we try and use African words, and then we also share the story behind some of those names and why those names are. That's our own way of sharing the African story around the continent.
Have you been faced with the whisper of neocolonization, with Africa being used to being fed its own story in a different perspective? Have you faced that on the market front? Because Africa sometimes has businesses being struck, bilateral deals being struck on the top level without considering its own story at the very bottom.
No, I haven't had those sort of attacks yet. Maybe I would. I don't know yet.
God
but
forbid.
currently no. But currently no. I'm African, so I can't be. I'm African fully. My parents, I've lived here, went to school here, so no one can take that away from me. And that's what I know, and it's the history that I want to share.
When you're dealing with the markets, though, when you're striking deals, when you're exploring new markets, is that a challenge that you face? Introducing your product to the market that is already neocolonized and flooded with the imports from the international front?
No. I think that the African brands have begun to create a niche for themselves. And just because you're an African brand, sticking with that story, sticking with that identity makes you create a niche for yourself. And so I haven't faced that. I think that the world generally is looking for an African brand that can stand for itself, can be unique and genuine and authentic. And I think that the African continent is ready for it. And so House of Tara is ready to take it as well.
What has prevented us from opening up our doors for more African brands, supporting our very own to be able to make it here in Africa and also on the international front? I think that we don't have enough people who have enough courage to take it. There's courage. A lot of times, women are usually in the forefront of the beauty industry. And women generally are afraid of dreaming big.
We have a general disposition to afraid of the fear of, you know, I don't want to be all this. I'm afraid of what it may mean, even as a mother or as a,
oh
as a
my
wife.
goodness, all that attention.
Yes,
yeah.
and so there are very few. You have a Mary Kay, you have Estee Lauder, you have Helena Rubinstein, you have Elizabeth Arden. These are all women in the beauty space, but because beauty is still a very an industry for women, a lot of women are not standing up to that occasion. But you know, I'm not going to wait any longer, so I'm taking that space.
What are the challenges you're facing at present? Because the successes are very evident. What are the challenges you're facing even as you're moving your brand forward?
I think one of the challenges is how do I ensure that how I see myself and how I see mentorship and how I see developing other women can become scaled. How do I ensure that for every 1,000 women that I know, they're all also equally doing same in developing the next generation of women? This is some of the challenges I'm facing currently. In the past, it was trying to raise finance. I don't have that challenge anymore because the business is big enough to be able to raise its own financing. In the past, I had issues with government policies on different products. I had challenges with logistics because there were infrastructure issues. But today, it's more challenged around how do I ensure that this becomes a movement where mentorship and building African businesses that are sustainable, that can outlive their founders, that are bigger than the person who started it, but also is leaving a legacy of developing the next generation of people, whether men or women.
There's a platform that is available for Kenyan women, East African women who are able to be in attendance. That's going to be happening tomorrow. We'll give you an opportunity to expound on that. But even as you're looking at this, the point that you've just uttered just indicates your vision, your need, your desire to pass on your legacy, your desire to pass on your vision. Is it that even when you're talking to women to move forward the vision, they're not willing to come out?
Yes, so there's the talk about leaning in.
Yeah.
So even within our organization, you see that there's an opportunity, and people are not willing to take the step. Women are more reluctant. Guys who are less competent want to take the step and develop as they go along. It is my vision. I started a TFD series, which is a platform for connecting the older generation to the younger generation and ensuring that there's a transfer of knowledge. I think that I've been a big beneficiary of mentorship, that a lot of the parts of who I am today, mentorship from my husband first of all, but mentorship from other women who've succeeded, who've held my hand. I wish that we had more of those sort of relationships across the entire continent.
What gaps? What are some of the issues that create the gaps? Is it that those who are ahead of us are willing to are not willing to trust us, or those who are ahead of us do not even have the time to understand that their legacy is important to pass forward?
I think that the young ones are not willing to stretch their hands, to raise their hands for help. And so there's an African proverb from Nigeria where it's the child that raises up their hand that gets lifted. Yeah. So I think that it's not about the older generation. The younger generation needs to learn how to
show that they are willing.
They're willing and ready to take. They're willing and ready to add value as well as receive value. So the question is, when you are in a relationship with an older woman, what value are you bringing to that relationship? Every time you think about that relationship, what is the value that you are adding to that person? And in adding value to that person, it becomes easier for them to also add value to you. Open doors, sponsor you when your name needs to be called, go to places and recommend you for positions and board sittings. These are things that mentors can do, but the question is, how many of us young people are willing to reach out our hands to the older generation?
There have been conversations that have been put forward on affirmative action, looking at strategies to edge in the women. What are your thoughts on that? Do we need to get a little bit more deliberate about getting women in so that they can raise their hands?
Yes.
Or do we just need to understand that 21st century, we are in a world of equality? You need to just fight it out with your peers, the men.
I'm not really sure about fighting it out. I think that women need to develop capability and competence. And so it should not be because you're a woman, that's why you got the position. It's because you have the ability for that role. That's one. Two, mentorship definitely opens the doors. Yes, doors can be opened by mentors, whether they're male or female. So we need those relationships and those networks that ensure that we're in the position. But we first of all need to develop our competencies and our capabilities.
What unique aspects are very evident when it comes to a woman at the top, when it comes to her leadership strategy?
I think nurturing. Women have the ability because it comes to us naturally. And so we're going to be more collaborative as leaders because as women, we have mammary glands, and that's part of the nurturing. I think that that's one of the significant traits that you find in women. I think that also the empathy, the part of us that's empathic. As leaders, we need to have empathy. I think that also comes naturally with women. So there's going to be a lot of empathy as well when we have. But I also believe, I'm a mother of 3 sons, and I don't want to be in a society where my children become marginalized because they're boys, because we're talking so much about the girl child.
Empowering the girl child.
But I think that every gender has what it brings to the table, and it becomes important to have all genders, right? Both male and female, because there are things that the male bring that the women bring, and until we have both together, we're not enjoying fully the possibilities of all genders.
Have there been challenges that you've had to face specifically because you're a woman, even as you're running for the top, based on the stereotype, misconceptions, attitude?
No. You know, I wish I could say otherwise, but no. I don't know whether it's because of the industry, whether because I created an industry, so I was more or less like the mother of that industry and determined. I think the stereotypes would be boys coming into the industry will be where there'll be a challenge. But in my case, no. In getting financing, I think, you know, it was just not a business that people knew, so I don't know that it was because I was a female. And also, I don't have a mindset that because I'm a woman, I'm being limited. And so maybe
that opens itself up to the stereotypes.
That's right. So I think that also everything's really, really about mindsets.
I like the fact that you mentioned that right now the challenges that you're facing do not include money. At this point, there's someone who's considering starting a business that I don't even know how to start this business. I don't even know what avenues to look at for financing. How do they get themselves from that point, as you were starting out young, fresh, vibrant, vigorous, not even thinking about failure, to this point where money is not an issue, the business sustains itself?
I think that we have to start small. I always believe that we have enough to start from where we are. Sometimes we're so focused on raising money that we're not focused on the real things, like, for example, the quality of our service or quality of our product. I think that when you start small, then your failure is smaller. I think that if we focus on building internally and organically, you learn on the way. So by the time you're raising finance, you understand your business enough to know where to apply that money that you're receiving. So if you ask me, start small, think big, grow fast as you can, be driven, pour your passion into it, but don't be too quick to look for bank loan. Don't be too quick. I started the business with 15,000 naira, which is equivalent at the time to $100. Today, the business is a multi-billion naira business. The company can pay me, I can get benefits from it. I was saying earlier on that I took a year off last year, and I could take the year off because I built a business that without me can function. But I think that you can definitely start small. And if we did that, then we'd learn along the way, and then we can truly build businesses that can be sustained.
Before we expand further on the greatness of your efforts, looking at Forbes, looking at Stanford, let's look at how you are balancing all these responsibilities as a mother, as a wife, looking at a business that is billion-dollar grossing business, and looking at the African continent. Even as you've already achieved so much greatness on the West African front, you still want to take on the African continent. How are you managing? How are you balancing? How are you still keeping your vision fresh while still keeping yourself authentic?
I think, first of all, from a spousal point of view, I think you have to marry right, first of all.
How do you marry right?
Yes,
that would be the other question that would be
come to Power Talk, you hear about that. You have to marry right. I think that's the one singular thing that I can advise every woman. Marrying right will be determining what is your vision for yourself. I was saying earlier on that the first time I came to Kenya, my husband facilitated everything. So the fact that I got here was because someone was more bothered about me taking the African frontier than I was even for myself. So I think that my husband's support has been a significant portion. I don't have to think about, problems at home. And so that reduces and increases the amount of time I can think about my business.
You have a shared vision.
Yes, and a shared vision. And not just in my vision, but also in his vision. So it becomes important, like I said, also about relationship with your mentors, is that you have to also be giving. And you have to think about, what is it that I bring? What value do I bring to this relationship? So if I'm in a relationship with a man, what value am I bringing to his own vision? How much am I thinking about what he's doing? What information and sourcing information am I giving to him? Oh, he's in consulting. Did you hear what Bain & Company is doing? Did you hear what McKinsey is doing? How are you creating a niche for yourself? Questions that you're asking. And then he knows that you're also interested in his.
Is that the one mistake that most women make? Because it's
all
when it
about
comes to women and failure, it's
Yes.
always tagged to a relationship that went wrong at some point.
I think generally it's not just about women, even about men. If your relationship isn't right, it stalls your life. So relationships are very important in who we are. That's why we are not born, we don't come to the world by ourselves. We have parents, that support system, father and mother. We have relationships with our siblings. So we are people of relationships. So if your relationships succeed, you thrive better. I think that in my own life, I'm surrounded with solid support systems, whether it's for my mentorship or from my husband or from my siblings or from my parents. There's a huge support, community of support that I have, that I think is part of my success story. And so it becomes important for every woman or every man to marry right. So you don't spend that time trying to work on your relationship and thinking about the problems you have and reducing the time you have to fulfill your passion and your purpose on the earth.
On top of marrying right, you have a few points there. What are the other two?
You have to also think about the value that you bring to that relationship. What value are you first of all giving before you think about the value that you also are getting? Yeah. How are you sharing your vision with the person? You know, what is it that you want to do, and how are you communicating that vision in a way that you show your passion and so you transfer, because passion is contagious, and you're sharing that passion with the next person as well who's also in that relationship with you.
When you're looking at the frontier, you're very passionate about passing on your legacy. Even as you're taking on the African continent, you can take a year off from your business because you, in a sense, have found a balance. You found a peace. You found a release by selecting the right workforce, selecting people who are also carrying forward their vision. What can people on the East African region, and specifically women, I beg your pardon, specifically women who are intending on coming on board to Power Talks, what can they expect to receive from you?
I'm going to be sharing my experience as someone who's built a brand. And built a brand beyond borders. I built a brand that over the last 18 years consistently. I want to share that. I want to share the things that I think, that the factors that I think that have helped me to do that. Attracting the right talents, definitely. Building an institution, and think about corporate governance, and think about ensuring that your books are balancing and auditing, and paying yourself a good salary, and being disciplined in how you're running the operations of your business, to the extent that you're also influencing the people who are working within your organization. I'm going to be sharing about building, understanding that every woman in Africa needs us, all of us collectively, to change the narrative of the continent. And until we decide that we want to build strong brands that can actually tell the African story to the world, until we do that, we are wasting our time. Nobody else will do it for us.
Because you're competing on a different platform altogether.
Yes, and then we have to create that niche for ourselves to say, we are African, authentically excited to be, and it's only that which is authentic is going to get attractive to the world. I don't want to be an American brand. I would never be a French brand. I would always and remain an African brand, and all the things that pertain to being African is all that I am. And so I'm not going to change my value system because I want to become Western. No, these are my value systems. We're family oriented. So when I'm running my business, I run it like it's a family community. We have family meetings. We don't have corporate office. We have a support system because we are Africans. And so those values that we are things that we need to share. At Power Talk Women, it's really about sharing that and thinking about empowering the next generation. I have been empowered by other women. I am empowering other women. I'm starting up a mentorship program for entrepreneurs across the continent. This is what Power Talk Woman is about. It's about empowering the next generation and empowering women. But after you've been empowered, what do you do with your empowerment? Is it just so that you are fancy and you are rich? No, it should be about giving and impacting lives. And until we begin to think about impacting, we'll be stuck in poverty. And so we need to come out of that mentality of all is just for me. All that I'm gaining, the popularity, the celebrity status is for me. No.
Do you feel that you're moving against a tide, a tsunami in a sense? Because the mentality around the African continent right now is save yourself and your people. Get what is yours and run. And on top of that, there's a neocolonized approach in business that has capitalism as the primary approach and the primary strategy.
My darling, I am focused on what I believe I can change.
Yeah.
I would not allow what my society, what the paradigms are, what the mindset are to influence what I've decided to do. I think I'm a light on a hill, and that light needs to shine. I'm not going to be overly consumed with the darkness around me. And if I can light my candle, light other candles, keep lighting other candles, and inciting other women to continue to light candles, then all of us collectively can build this Africa to become the light that we should be.
Your humility is very empowering because you're not only a candle, you're an international flame. You've been recognized on the international front looking at your mention in Forbes, one of the 20 youngest women. And that was a while back, but right now you've already been mentioned in Stanford. Maybe you can share with us the moment you got that call that we want to give a little bit more focus on the light that you're burning on the African continent.
So Stanford University decided to do a case study. You know, they're very passionate about entrepreneurship and particularly about how do you use your entrepreneurship to reduce poverty levels, and decided that they wanted to do a case study on House of Tara. And today the case study is being sold on the Harvard Business Case Study website. It's very exciting for us. The first time I saw the page, I had goosebumps all over my body. I couldn't sleep. They sent a team of people to come to Nigeria to do interviews and to look at the business over a period of a few months and put together that case study. That is what we need from Africa. We need the Ivy League universities across the world to say there is something special here.
That wants to change the story of what was the dark continent.
And what were considered to be the dark continent. So this is what we need to do. And so for me, it's very exciting. I'll be here again in May because the Stanford Seed Program is setting up in East Africa. I was a beneficiary of it in West Africa, and they're setting up again in May, and really about helping entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. We need businesses that can be scaled up to employ 1,000 people. And ExxonMobil didn't start overnight. It started with one person with one head, just like we all have, but decided I was going to build a business that was going to outlive me, and thought about systems, structures in place to ensure the sustainability of that business. The businesses like Standard Oil that then became Chevron, these are all American brands that have outlived their founders. We need to build those businesses. And Stanford is saying, I'm willing to support African businesses to be able to do so. And I think it's an exciting time for us as a continent.
Do we still need to have conversations with our governments to be able to change the story from within, even as the international front is handing us an opportunity for support?
If we have the opportunity, but like you know, like you can tell from my outlook on things, I'm more focused on the things that I can change. I don't have the power to change government. I don't have the power to change anybody else, but I have the power to make an impact. And so as I'm making an impact, I must use my influence, my position, my mandate to ensure that other people are making that impact. That's why I was saying that's where my concern really is how do I scale up this passion that I have to develop the next generation? How do I infect other people with it? And I'm hoping that after this conversation, you will be thinking to yourself, who are these young girls who want to do this, what I'm doing?
Not even thinking to myself,
Yes.
I've already thought to myself, that was 5 minutes into the interview. When you're looking at your vision right now, you are a lady who's acquired recognition on two fronts, the creative and also the considered sensible arm of life in terms of getting your accreditation in law. There's a young lady out there, there's a young gentleman out there who's thinking of the big switch. How do I shift from one side of life to the other? Is it ever too late? How can I make that big move that will mean I'm fighting for my passion and I'm doing so sensibly and not, flying after the fairies?
Flying after the fairies is great.
For
it's
a time.
Fantastic for a season. And sometimes when you're younger, you can fly with the fairies. But I think having a good education is very important. I think it positions you for much more, and that you limit yourself when you don't have a good education. Today, I want to do an MBA in any of the Ivy League universities. I can't because I have a first degree, and I want to explore more, and I want to attract talent. If I am not well educated, it becomes difficult to attract certain talent, and you can't lead someone who you are not. Sometimes when you're not that educated, then it becomes difficult to even attract someone who's gone to Imperial College. So, for example, our head of commercial went to Imperial College in England. Maybe if I was an illiterate who just did makeup, I may not have also have the capacity to scale up the business the way that I have. And if Stanford offered me a program, I may not also have been able to enjoy the program fully because I'm not understanding business process analysis. I'm not understanding cost structure because I just don't have that background. And I think I would advise the young people, we need our education. We need our formal education. So go through school. Embrace it as a great season in your life. You build networks there. I believe so much in networks and relationships. My first job was gotten because somebody on my campus introduced me to somebody else. So that's where your first network of people, you have that as well. So it's important to go through that exercise. You would know when it's time to do the switch. People who are creative also have gut instincts. You just know. And when it's time, you can make the switch.
At this point, I would want to end with a peep into what are your do's and don'ts in terms of habits that you've adopted to keep yourself on track?
I think it's about relationships, surrounding myself with great quality women and guys as well, and ensuring that I'm being influenced also because we are all a product of our association. That's very important. My spirituality is a part of that. I get a lot of inspiration from developing myself spiritually. It's a significant part of the habits that I've cultivated: prayer time, the study of the Bible, hanging also with people who are equally that way, exposing myself to education. So I'm currently just starting up the CU program at the Lagos Business School, going back to school every year. I'm going to go back to INSEAD next year. So constantly going out and doing new things, coming to a different country, traveling. So I'm here in Kenya, for example, for the Power Talks Woman. Yes, it's tomorrow. Yes, we're going to be talking about all these things, but it gives me an opportunity yet again to meet other women and rub minds, come to a different part of the world and learn new things about East Africa that I didn't know before. These are the ways that I've kept myself on point.
Point of hope. Is there a point that it's ever too late to create change and reach for your greatness?
Nope.
When you're ending the interview, give us a brief on Power Talks, which will be happening tomorrow. Any cost factors? Who can be in attendance? Where can we go? Yeah.
Okay, so two things. I saw Power Talks is obviously an organization here in Nairobi that also has a new arm called Power Talks Women. I found the synergy. I found that we had a lot of things in common. Power Talks Women is really about empowering women and ensuring that the empowered woman is thinking about national transformation, transformational leadership. I look at House of Tara, and the entire business model is also about empowering women for transformation. So they're thinking about leadership. So it became important to me to be a part of what is happening also here in Nairobi as regards Power Talks. Power Talks is, we want to empower women, but we want those women who have become empowered to also touch the next generation of women. So we're going to have a team of women, I think 5 of us, who are going to be on a panel. Sometime we'll have time to also share. And it'll be a close-up relationship or a seed time where people who are invited to guest participants can have the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations. I'm sure there'll be speed mentoring as well, because of course you have the opportunity to meet us one-on-one. These are some of the women who you read about in newspapers and see on TV, but you have the chance to see them one-on-one. I think it's going to be a great time. I look forward to it. It's at Safari Park Hotel tomorrow. If you just go online, Power Talk Women, there's so much information. That's why I'm here in Nairobi. I'm just here for tomorrow, and after that I'm back to Lagos. But I'm very excited to be. I'm always excited to be in Nairobi.
Thank you so much. When you're ending the interview, maybe at this point, we would want to close by peeping into your frontier. 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, what can we expect from House of Tara? What can we expect from Tara herself? And what can we expect from your agenda to change the perspective of women?
From Tara's personal agenda, I'm starting up a bride grooming academy. You'll find out later what that really means. I'm starting up an African entrepreneurship network where I'm picking 6 young rising stars, people who are trying to build businesses across the continent, to spend 4 weeks with me in Nigeria, just shadowing me and seeing what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. In 5 years' time, you'll hear House of Tara will become most definitely the biggest African beauty brand. It will be promoting our culture, our language. You would see it in Selfridges, you will see it in the US, and every time you see it, it gives you a sense of fulfillment that this belongs to us. And even though I'm seeing this here in New York, I'm seeing it here in Tokyo, this is exciting times because we are African. This is what we are able to do.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tara. It was great to peep into your world, to catch a little bit of your fire, even as you call it a candle. I think it's a storm. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa this morning. I hope you've been inspired. Even as we're talking about reaching for your greatness, this is another platform for you to tap into, to be able to see what the possibilities are, to be able to get into the same circumference as those who've managed to touch the pinnacle of their pyramids and get to see what is possible for you, even as you're starting off. As Tara has indicated, you do not need to always think big, getting that 4 million shilling loan. You need to just start small. Even with 100 shillings, you can get yourself to greatness right at your doorstep. Thank you so much for joining us. From the team and myself, enjoy the rest of your viewing right here.